Hello, it's Amy from Amy Says So. Thanks for watching. I am coming to you today to tell you a story of my very first group ride, or my attempt. I didn't actually get it. And I do not think that this was ever on the blog. So this is an old story, but I don't think I've ever told it before. So I had to look it up, go back and look up old race results. And this would have been in the summer, maybe late summer of 2010. That was my first year of triathlon. My first race was a DNF, which I tried to do on a fat tire bike, a hybrid. And then I went out the very next day and bought a road bike, aluminum Cannondale road bike, blue, very pretty. My helmet and my shoes matched the bike. It was really great. And then I wanted to get better on the bike, right? Super common. And I was at this point like probably a 13, 14 mile an hour rider, to be perfectly honest. Maybe, I don't remember, not fast, right? Not fast. And everything I read seemed to say that if I wanted to get faster, which I did, that I should go on group rides. So I was looking for a group ride. Specifically, I was looking for a women's group ride. And so the reason I'm telling this story today is that I just wrote on the blog an article about women's groups and women's rides and women's events. And so when I was writing it down, I was like, I have never done an all women's ride, which is true, but it did pop into my memory that I had actually looked for a group ride. Okay, so here's the story, because I think it's a funny story. I hope you laugh at my experience. I hope it motivates you. I hope it inspires you. So I was looking for a group ride, and I looked online, and I found a group a website for a group called Miami Pace. And this group is no longer active in Miami, although I think all of the people who were in charge of this group in Miami are still around. But on this website were all these fabulous pictures of groups of women at a recent triathlon. And they were happy, and they were together, and they were having a great time. And I thought that Miami Pace was a women's training group, and they had rides posted and contact information, and I thought that was great. So I reached out to the group leader from the website, just whoever, and this woman got back to me. Her name is Tachi. She's still in Miami. She makes beautiful cycling and triathlon apparel, but Miami Pace is not around anymore. So Tachi got right back to me. She said, I personally am out of town, but the group is riding. I don't remember if it was her boyfriend or her husband, will be there. He'll help you. You guys will go out. It'll be great. So even though she told me that she wasn't going to be there and her husband was going to be there, or her boyfriend or whoever he was, I still at this point thought that this was a women's group. And I had the information, and I spent the rest of the week, gearing up my courage to go meet this group ride of women and go on this ride. So when I go on Saturday or Sunday morning, I don't even remember, I pull up, it's at the elementary school, and there are no other women there. There is a small, very intense, very fit, very triathlete looking group, all kitted out in matching kits, so I knew I was in the right spot. They were wearing the uniforms, shaved helmets, glasses, very strong, very thin, very intimidating. Okay, so this is in 2010. I have a kindergartner and a preschooler, so my days are really spent at this point with like toddlers and goldfish and not in the world of triathlon quite yet, although I'm getting into it. But I can't leave, right? I had messaged them and said I was coming. I was there, they could see me. I had pulled up, they could see me through the window of the car. So I hop out and I go say hello. And it is not women, it's these very intense men. But here's the really, really good part of the story. They were extremely nice to me. And it turned out that they were actually, this is the reason I'm pretty sure this was the end of the summer, they were actually heading out on a 60-mile ride. And so this guy, who unfortunately I've forgotten his name, was super encouraging and super welcoming, and he just said to me, like, do you think you're ready for a 60-mile ride today? And of course I was not at all ready for that. I was ready for like maybe a 10-mile ride. And he said, we talked about maybe I could start with them and then come back on my own. So we went and looked at my car, and I had actually forgotten my cycling shoes, and I was crazy embarrassed, just really, really intimidated and really embarrassed. But these guys were nice to me, right? They were welcoming, and I didn't actually end up riding with them, but they took the time to explain the triathlon season. They gave me some names of some other clubs. They gave me instructions, like they gave me route sheets for short and long routes from where I was that day. And I remember specifically, they were like, please come back out, like, please stick with it, like, don't, it all happen, we all start somewhere. And so when I look back on that ride, right, when I look back from where I am now, 9 years later, as someone who leads rides and is in a position to welcome new cyclists and new triathletes to the sport, I have like a different impression of that day, and a different perspective. Not a different impression, but a different perspective. I'm super grateful that they were welcoming. But I mentioned it in the article. I've never actually felt unwelcome at any point by triathletes in the sport because I was a woman. Not ever. But they were ready to go ride. They were training for a race. They had a 60-mile ride in Miami. And to be honest, in the summer in Miami, I personally, I leave super early, and every minute is important in the day because it just gets hotter and more humid. And so when I think back to the fact that these guys spent, probably 10, maybe as much as 20 minutes just talking to me, and I was a complete beginner. It was so obvious that I was not ready to go with them on that day. I was just completely beginner, and they didn't make me feel not welcome. They made me feel like I obviously felt like I was not ready to go at their level. I didn't even know that level existed. Never even occurred to me that somebody would go on a 60-mile bike ride at this point. So, but I did, they were kind. They were kind to me, and I think that that's a really big deal. And I do a lot of thinking about, the importance of beginners in sport and how I can welcome beginners in the sport. And I don't ever want to forget what it feels like to be a beginner. I mean, maybe you, when you're watching this video, maybe you were not intimidated by triathletes when you started the sport, but I actually was. I was very intimidated. I was a runner. I didn't have any of the right equipment. I didn't look the part at all. I still probably really don't, I look like a suburban mom, which is what I am. And if I'm not, kitted out in my spandex, I don't look like a triathlete. I'm not a pro athlete. And so when I came on any of those situations where there were super fit people, I was very intimidated. And so it made a big difference that people were welcoming to me, and I'm very thankful for it. But I still laugh at the fact that I made this ridiculous assumption based on a photo that this was going to be a women's ride, which it clearly wasn't. It wasn't even actually, now I know that it wasn't even a women's group. It was totally a co-ed group, but they had done a triathlon and taken a bunch of pictures just of the women that were there in the group, and then I just in my mind just made all of those assumptions. But it didn't work out. But it did eventually work out, and it was actually, I just know this because I did make a post for when I joined Team Hammerheads and did an open water swim, which is the first thing I did with Team Hammerheads, which was over a year later. And I remember it would have either been before or after that, but they made an announcement they were doing a beginner ride. And I was still so desperate for a beginner group ride to figure out how to ride with a group that I remember that I completely rescheduled our family's weekend to make sure that I could go do that ride. And it was a really big deal. And so that is the story of my first attempt at a group ride and then my first actual group ride. I hope you find it entertaining. I hope it brings you some joy. I hope that if you are out there and you are trying to work up the courage to try something new and do something new, I hope that hearing my story of making that attempt, putting myself into an uncomfortable situation, and knowing that I did really start there, and I did go on to do all of the things that I've done. I hope that helps. I hope it's good. And that is all. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.